So we're still obviously not fully knowledgeable about what exactly was hid in Iran. We know a bit more than we knew yesterday, but what seems to be clear, even though not what we would have advocated for, but it does seem pretty clear that Israel caused some issues for Iran that are beyond what they did with the previous bombing and yeah, I think what we saw a couple of days ago is a continuation of what we've been seeing for a few months, which is the Iranian kind of wipe Israel off the map apparatus is crumbling, and this attack on Iran furthered that to a great degree. Unfortunately, it didn't finish the job, and it seems that Israel is waiting for more Iranian attacks to take more steps. It seems pretty clear because Israel has kind of stated this, and that's a big problem because the best we can hope for at this point is Iran doing some sort of additional attack, not being too successful in terms of not being successful at all, hopefully in terms of killing anybody, but being successful in showing some sort of force that Israel would have to retaliate for. I can't believe I'm having this conversation. Like this is so stupid because Iran is making no secret about its goal. It's the only secret or the only question mark is when can it take the action that would achieve this goal? And it seems like it's further away than we hope for, but it could be never. It could be never if Israel decided to get rid of the Iranian regime, which with every day in this war seems like something that is much easier than previously thought. Welcome to the Daily Objective. James, your thoughts on what we've seen from Iran after this attack and what it means for the future of this conflict.
Well, yesterday I was making the second point you were making about how we need more, and this obviously doesn't take out the regime. And so long as the regime in Iran exists, they'll be funding bad guys in perpetuity. On the other hand, as you also just pointed out, how pathetic. I mean, especially in contrast to Israel. Now that we've seen both countries' abilities to attack and defend, we can now see how effective Israel is, both in its defensive capabilities and keeping out missiles, but now we're starting to see how effective Israel can be in its attack capacity. Now it's attacking in self-defense, obviously, even were to take out the entire regime, which it should do. But look at how easy it was to penetrate. I know that they've got some of the best airplanes in the world. And fighter planes and surveillance planes and jet aircraft in the world. So easy peasy to penetrate Iranian airspace. Easy peasy to take out Iranian air defenses. And they were gone and they had to have been taken out first because then the next two waves could occur so successfully. Now, as you say, we don't know the details on what was taken out in all those waves successfully. But the point is, no Israeli planes were shot down. All it did was cause damage on the ground in Iran. It may have very effectively taken out all of the air defenses in effect for Iran because Israeli planes had no problem penetrating Iranian airspace. That tells you just how, and I keep stressing this point as well, the Iranians are pathetic. They do not want a war with Israel. They would likely lose. They do not certainly want a war with Israel and America. So they have to be measured about their response. Now, bless their hearts, the mullahs have said they're going to attack back in retaliation because look, part of the idea was, look, if we don't hit your leadership, if we don't hit your oil fields, if we don't take out your nuclear weapons program, that could end it all here. You could, for international political purposes, and even for the extent you need to worry about domestic political purposes, say, okay, no big deal, and downplay it. And Iran looked like they were downplaying it for a long time. But I've heard the announcement from the Iranian government, they do plan to stage an attack. Now, think about that. Is as pathetic as you can possibly get. What are you going to do? Like the previous two, or even more? We can see how unsuccessful you are in your ballistic missile attacks on Israel. and how effective Israel's defenses are. And we can also see how pathetic your own defenses are and how effective the Israeli Air Force is in penetrating your air defenses. So they're, it's like, taunting the bigger guy. It's kind of stupid, but think about the international psychology that permits that. They assume that the international community will be on their side, in effect, calling whatever Israel does awful, bloodthirsty. What are the words that we're hearing lately? Aggression, escalation. Isn't that a lovely concept? Failing, we were doing the logic course earlier. If you're a subscriber to ARCUK, UK, you can participate in our discussion of Leonard Peikoff's logic course. And we were talking about the logical fallacy that involved in this sort of thinking. It has to be that they rely on the world's morality to restrain Israel. In other words, whatever attack we do, Israel will still get the blame. They have to. Otherwise, they're just being absolutely stupid, taunting what is clearly a superior military force, clearly superior technology. They have to be assuming that the world is going to be on their side and further handcuffing Israel in what it's trying to do. I fear that the nature of this attack itself shows that Israel is being handcuffed by American demands to a certain extent, and that is awful and evil. And on the part of my government here in the United States, but come on, Iran. If and when moral clarity comes to the West, Iran will be easy, easy, easy to take out. These are savages. They probably don't know how to even use the degree of technology they have, and much less maintain it, sustain it, defend it, and that sort of thing. It's pathetic. These people really are medieval savages trying to wield 21st century weapons. And Israel has shown its ability to use 21st century weaponry and technology very, very effectively and very intelligently. Iran is showing just exactly the opposite and demonstrating just how weak they are. And, ladies and gentlemen, just how easy it would be to take out their government if we ever got the moral backbone. We could do this without a lot of fuss, without messing our hair too badly. Really, would it require boots on the ground even to take out the Iranian regime? I'm beginning to think that maybe you could take out the Iranian regime from the air if you had a little support from the United States.
Yeah, and again, we have to remember what Israel will have is the support of many people in Iran. Now, many people in Iran do support the regime. We have to remember that we see the protests, but we can also see when there is a pro-government rally, there are people there. It's not 100% of the people against the government. And as Skyliner says in the chat, he says Iranian regime is well protected by leftists and socialists of the world. Yeah, I was thinking about that yesterday when the Iranian army spokesman, I'm going to say spokesman. I know we're supposed to say spokesperson now, but I'm guessing in Iran it's most likely a man. They said, we have the right to retaliate, but we call for a ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza. Yeah, that sounds very much like it could be a government, it could be an army spokesperson in Iran, it could be it could be Blinken or Biden, and that. Thank you, Enric, for the super chat. Enric says,
Iron Dome. The first question, their Iron Dome is the morality of the West.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really their Iron Dome.
Enric in the super chat says, does Israel depend on USA opinion on what to do? Unfortunately, it doesn't. Not like it's not a metaphysical thing. It's a choice. It's a man-made thing. It's a choice of the Israeli government to absolutely consider America's point of America's position before taking any action. And America's position is you shouldn't take action, or you should take action that doesn't achieve the goal of the action. The goal, by the way, being de-escalation. I'm all for that goal. The way you achieve that kind of de-escalation is by defeating the enemy and making it no longer possible for them to escalate on their own timeline. But yeah, it's the point about leftists of the world, and it's not just people on the left. Unfortunately, people, with hatred of Israel is kind of a cross-party thing. But tomorrow on the reality show, we're going to discuss this incredible opinion piece by Jeremy Bowen of the BBC, the guy who, again, the head of the international desk at the BBC, the guy who determines how the BBC reports on world news. I strongly recommend reading that. It very much paints as Israel as the aggressor and Iran as trying to figure out how to do
That's the
things.
logical fallacy of the concept escalation. It doesn't distinguish between an escalation done by the defenders or an escalation done by the aggressor. Someone who umps the ante could be, if you get hit, you have a right to hit back 10 times harder, it seems to me. As we've said, you don't want a proportionate response. Sometimes a defensive escalation is the way to de-escalate the entire conflict. But you'll notice what a logically sloppy, it's technically speaking, fallacy of equivocation, and technically speaking, the logical fallacy of composition. The term escalation is fallacious, and if they use it, then what they're trying to do is specifically blur the distinction between the use of aggressive force and the use of defensive force, because using a lot more force in defense can be a very moral kind of escalation, because it can bring about an end to the war altogether, an ultimate de-escalation. Yes, exactly. So conceptually, these people are lying when they use words like that, rather than identify correctly who is the defender, who is the aggressor, because the defender can use a lot more force in response, and that's perfectly moral. And that's precisely what they don't want you to think about, the morally, the facts that would give you the morally relevant information.
Yeah. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says Harris loves Iran. Yeah. I mean, certainly the policies of the Biden administration, which Harris, I think, is worse than Biden on when it comes to this. Although let's hope we never find out in a sense. Although I'm not sure. I hope we find out what the alternative thing.
Holy
Anyway,
careful, Razi, what are you saying? Are you going to make news today with yourself?
well, I'm still of the position I wouldn't vote, but yeah, I am terrified of what Harris would
Afraid
do
on
when it comes to
Israel's sheet.
Israel.
Yes.
But yeah, the point of Harris, yeah, look, Harris will, I'm sure, remind us if she gets elected that she's the first woman president. What a big day it is for feminism. I'm sure she's very much in favor of canceling any man who has ever called a woman sweetheart. But when it comes to the regime that executes women for taking off the hijab, well, she's more sympathetic. It's
Oh no, she
certainly.
appeases the most sexist regimes and cultures in this world. She'd appease altogether. And she would be no Margaret Thatcher or even a Golda Meir. No, she would be just the opposite of a decisive female leader. You see, I'm no sexist. It's just she happens to be an appeaser, like probably worse than Obama and Biden. And look at what they got us, October 7th.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think she might be like Golda Meir, because remember, Golda Meir refused to believe that war is coming, and Israel was almost wiped off the map because of that. But yeah, she is no Margaret Thatcher. I agree with you. Unfortunately, Trump is no Margaret Thatcher as well, and
Well,
Netanyahu,
that's true as well.
Netanyahu, despite what people tell us, is also no Margaret Thatcher. Yeah, we could use a Thatcher here. Anyway, a couple of other points. So with this Israeli this Israeli activity, one of the things that Israel did is, rhetorically, Israel always says, we have a right to retaliate. We'll operate wherever we have to. We can do whatever we want. And in a sense, some of this was, a way to further the rhetoric with some action, in the sense that for 3 hours, Israeli fighter jets were just flying around Iranian airspace,
Wherever they
having
wanted to go. I mean,
some
where do you
crappy
want
air
to go in the
defense.
area? Iran could
And
do zero to stop Israeli planes from going wherever and doing whatever. And that's the problem for Iran, isn't it?
yeah, and Alex mentioned in the chat yesterday that it showed the weakness of Russian defense capabilities, because Iran and Russia, remember, those of you who support Ukraine and Palestine, no, it's the same war, and Russia and Iran are the same side of that war, despite what people, including both presidential nominees in America, think. And when we see that weakness, we saw that weakness. Remember when Russia invaded and was everybody expected it to be days before it takes over all of Ukraine, and the weakness shocked everybody and also helped people support Ukraine who were before that kind of on the fence. We're seeing more of that, and we really need to use this opportunity. If we don't, then Iran's weakness could be something that could be fixed over time. If we give them that time, they will take it. Same as with Hezbollah,
You can
same
get
as with
sloppy.
Hamas. Yeah.
You can get sloppy with a nuke. In a way, you can't be sloppy with other type of weapons. You have to be more precise. What do they say? Close only counts in horseshoes and atomic bombs. Yeah, close counts with atomic bombs, and that's why you wouldn't even want them to have any sort of atomic bomb. So take advantage of what we know to be their really pathetic weakness right now and take out their nuclear program before it gets fully developed. That is a great example of what you were just saying there. Yes, apparently, Israeli planes can fly with impunity in the area. So why don't we take out the oil fields? Why don't we take out the mullahs and the leadership in Tehran? I mean, it makes perfect sense as well for that. I mean, if the thought is, well, gosh, it'll cause a lot of casualties on our side. No, I don't think they have the technology to cause a lot of casualties on our side. That means the good guys should take advantage of this weakness right now. It's not that, people will often say, well, you're the big Goliath and they're the little weak David. And so therefore it's evil to go after the little guy. No, it isn't. If that little guy is developing a nuclear weapon, if that little guy is constantly killing you, here and there and here through this proxy and that proxy, even the little guy needs to be taken out aggressively. Just because you're the bigger and stronger and more competent doesn't mean there can't be murderous, monstrous aggressors who need to be thoroughly taken out. Another logical fallacy. I keep pointing out these logical fallacies because we were discussing logic this morning, but you can see the logical fallacies that go on all the time. Gosh, if we escalate this will mean a wider regional conflict. No, ladies and gentlemen, look at how pathetic Iran is. If we do a big ass escalation against Iran right now, they'll collapse. They don't have the goods here, ladies and gentlemen. They don't have the capacity to defend themselves. And if the United States would join in, there would be no chance that Iran could survive, given the overwhelming technological advantage that the other side would have, and obviously has, and given the brilliant way in which Israel uses its superior technology as well. In conjunction, Iran could be history tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, without a lot of problem. And this would be much easier to do now. Do you think it is true? Russia and Iran are very close. Russia uses Iranian drones. Russia supplies, and who are the biggest trading partners with Iran? China and Russia. Duh. Come on. And we see a closer alliance, thanks to Western weakness lately, by the way, between North Korea and Russia and China and Iran. The bad guys are working ever closer and closer together. But do you think for 1 minute that China or Russia would lift a finger to help Iran? No, they would not.
I'm going to say why I somewhat disagree, but yeah, the bad guys are working closer and closer together, while the good guys are condemning those good guys who do minimal, insufficient efforts to defend themselves. But I think, look, we kind of have this fantasy that if we get rid of the Iranian regime, the good guys will take over. It'll be a free country. I don't think it'll be that easy. It's very likely that there's going to be some sort of civil war situation. And I do think Russia and China would do whatever they can to make sure that freedom doesn't win, and that they still have some sort of dictatorship, which will likely be an Islamic dictatorship. And I don't think the West will be as supportive as it should be of its side of that war.
That's the thing. It would be the battle would be within Iran.
Yeah.
Would Russia do anything about, could Russia at the moment, back on its heels, still recruiting North Koreans to help them fight their war against Ukraine? Do you think Russia, with all on its hands right now, could do anything more than attempt to influence Iran domestically?
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Well, But that's also why we need to keep Russia on its heels. So if I made my anti-Harris statement, I'll throw in some of my anti-Trump statement. Yeah, Trump should realize that Russia is an enemy, and supporting Ukraine is crucial, rather than doing what he did yesterday in Michigan, which is bringing some members of the Arab community on stage to tell the voters in Michigan how Trump will bring a ceasefire to that's what scares me about Trump. It's there's
He'll
no doubt
negotiate
Paris
with
is going to be terrible for Israel. There is some doubt that Trump will be as good as we hope for
but
Israel, and
Trump
I'd
will
like to see him
negotiate.
lift
He'll
that to.
negotiate with Tehran. He'll negotiate with Moscow. He'll negotiate with anyone. The difference is, I think, Trump, at least comes a point where he would use force. And will Kamala Harris negotiate with everyone? Yeah, but on her knees from a position of supplication and appeasement and begging cowardice. So we don't, unfortunately, have an option for a U.S. president who wouldn't negotiate with bad guys. The question is, do we have an option of one who would at least sometimes use force? Unfortunately, that's
Yeah.
the
By the way, somebody in the chat just says TDS. We talked about the Daily Show a couple of days ago, but no, I love that. We can criticize Harris, and then if we say anything critical about Trump, the pro-Trump crowd jumps in with the TDS stuff. Yeah, look, this is why people. This is a big part of why people fear Trump. Although I think his own statements certainly back it up, which
Well, I
is
think there is such a thing as TDS. I mean, people do lie about Trump, but the things you can say true about him are sometimes critical as well. He will negotiate with any dictator on this planet if he thinks he can get a deal. In some way, he craves their fear and respect. You can tell from the way he talks about them.
Yeah,
Uh, uh,
he respects them, and he said that. He what did he say about Kim Jong-un? His people respect him. Yeah, because if you don't respect him, you get a bullet to the head, or you disappear somewhere, which is worse than a bullet to the head. Let me go to the super chats. Thank you, Bull Moose, for the super chat. Bull Moose says, for everyone who says the S-300 is an, quote, advanced anti-aircraft defense, it was developed in the 1970s. It's ancient by today's standards. Yeah, I'm not sure it's completely ineffective. For example, if you want to shoot a helicopter down or something, that could work. But yeah, when it comes to
Well, they get upgraded. You know, the stuff in the 70s has been upgraded, but the bottom line point is, look, it is even upgraded old stuff gets through Iranian air defenses if it's intelligently used. So that's the point.
Yeah, and there is something to all these backward countries kind of helping each other. So Russia is using Iranian drones in Ukraine. They now have North Korean soldiers fighting for them. I mean, that's unbelievable. And it's again, it's going to be so much easier than we think to actually defeat these enemies, including Russia. And we've seen that. So we just need, the cojones. And
We do.
that's not a sexist comment against Harris. Like we said, a Thatcher would be preferable to all in any of the above.
Well, let me put it this way: Margaret Thatcher had more cojones than anyone we're talking about
Yeah.
so far. So,
Margaret Thatcher went to war halfway around the world for an
yeah.
island that doesn't really matter between you and me. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. By the way, that island might be in there might be some stuff going around it nowadays, and I don't know if the betting companies offer bets on this, but I would probably bet that Keir Starmer will not send any troops there. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says Biden is the worst president ever, surpassing Andrew Johnson, previous record holder. Is Andrew Johnson the previous record holder, James? And is Biden the new record holder? I'm not sure
Andrew
about both.
Andrew Johnson was the successor of Abraham Lincoln following Lincoln's assassination, and he was the first president who was impeached. He was a bad president, but my God, we've had some awful presidents since then. I would have to include Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Lyndon Baines Johnson, um, um, uh, Richard Nixon. I mean, we've had some really gloriously bad presidents. Look at what Obama and just in terms of the context of Iran. Look at what Obama and Biden have done in terms of enriching and empowering Iran with their appeasement. I believe that that is a, a necessary cause, but for October 7th was their appeasement. So we've had some awful presidents who've done some awful things. That's a
Yeah,
tough
yeah.
fight.
I would throw in another name into there to just to piss off some of the, not just to piss off because it's true, but Donald Trump belongs in the worst presidents ever, which is why this election is so scary because you have two candidates for the title worst president ever, and of course one of them isn't running, but his vice president who is probably worse. Like we might miss Biden when if and when Harris is president. So which, by the way, is a possibility for people who don't want to believe it. Unfortunately, that could happen.
Look at how close the polls are in America, and we're only 9 days away from a national election here. So,
Yeah. And by the way, people, we are aware that we're just 9 days away. There will be content about the presidential election, but there will some good content, maybe some that will even surprise some people. But yes, we will be. The war isn't pausing for the election. So neither is the war coverage here. Um, Deborah says Carter was much worse than Andrew Johnson. I have to say I don't know enough about Andrew Johnson. I think Carter was terrible in some ways. There are some things
speaking of
economically that
Iran,
yeah,
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 I mean, it's just
yeah.
pathetic when the Iranian Revolution happened. But did Reagan follow up, the so-called tough Republican? Did he follow up to do anything about Iran? Well, he got the hostages home, and that was it. And then he did nothing when an Iranian-backed group called Hezbollah started killing people in Beirut, including hundreds of Americans. Did Reagan do anything? When hundreds of international people were killed by an Iranian-backed proxy group in Lebanon? No. So,
By the
I,
way, Christian says in the chat, why did the Muslims yesterday say they are for Trump? Yeah, we talked about this, and look, the reason is because Trump will tell people what he thinks will get them to vote for him, which is what scares me here. He might. I'm sure he prefers Israel to Iran, but I'm not sure that's gonna
well, I think
remain a fact, for when he's president.
I think a good deal of it is that those Arab Americans who would have supported Harris are less enthusiastic. Their numbers have come down so that what was a stable number of Arab Americans who supported Trump is still there and is now outnumbering slightly those Arab Americans who are going to say out loud, I support Harris. It's a decline in her support among Muslim and Arab Americans,
Yeah,
not necessarily an increase in their support for Trump.
and that's one of those sad things about playing politics because the people who were going to vote for Harris but aren't voting for her because she's not anti-Israel enough, you don't want their votes. Like these are you want to win the election, so you want people voting for you, but these are not people you want on your side. These are bad people. Bad people think Harris is not anti-Israel enough. So
Because when Trump was president, he had an immigration ban on people from Muslim countries. And because of that, he's been called a racist and Islamophobe and so forth. And I think he's taking advantage of this moment where he's leading among Arab Americans in Michigan and taking advantage of it for political purposes. I think that's mostly what's going on here, ladies and gentlemen. I think that Trump would be at least a comparatively better friend of Israel than Biden or Ms. Harris would be. So has Biden has been or she will be, right?
thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says last president I like was JFK. He got done away with because he wanted to change things. Um,
I have to say Kennedy was a bad president. Bad president. He was an open advocate of altruism. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. He gave us what Ayn Rand called the fascist new frontier. He gave us things like the Peace Corps. He also screwed up at the Bay of Pigs, for example. He brought us to the brink of near nuclear crisis with Russia because of his own weakness. So no, I'm not a big advocate of. I mean, there are a couple of things Kennedy did that I think I can like, but mostly he was a ghastly president, like most of the presidents of the 20th century. And in the 20th century, oh my gosh, I mean, I'm down to Calvin Coolidge, and when I'm in a better mood, some, yeah, there's really not a lot in the last 100 years to choose from with U.S. presidents. I'm sorry to say.
Yeah. Last president I liked was Milei, although an upcoming article on our Substack by Alejandro might convince you otherwise. Yeah. So James, when we look at this, kind of new information that we have on Iran just by looking at what happened last night, the night before last, and what we're expecting next. As I said at the beginning, and as I said yesterday, when PC asked, "Will Iran retaliate?" I said, "I hope so. I do hope so. Again, I hope nobody gets hurt in those attacks, but." I understand that even if people get hurt in that attack, that compared to if Iran attacks when it can actually win, is there's a big difference. And also, something else we talked about yesterday was how Iran's proxies are. Look, Israeli soldiers and civilians died today. Civilians in a terrorist attack, and soldiers have died quite a few. I think October is the worst month this year for Israel in terms of deaths.
Casualties
So
this month have been bad.
it,
But then again, they're actually doing something in Lebanon.
yeah,
And
yeah, and Hezbollah is
the
being
thing is, though, we
dismantled.
need to minimize the casualties on our side. Our side. That's the key difference here, and that's what we need to take very careful steps at ensuring that why, for example, does Biden say, well, after American soldiers have been killed, after American bases have been bombed, okay, well, if you kill any more, well, wait. So you're saying that some American soldier has to die? It's similar here. We have to wait for an Iranian attack that may kill Israelis. Wait a minute. So what you're saying here is that someone's got to die before we do anything really decisive against Iran? That's the moral corruption there. But if that's what we're left with, if, in other words, to provoke the kind of attack that needs to happen, they need to attack, and let's, like you say, let's hope it doesn't kill any Israelis. Let's hope it doesn't kill any Americans. But wait, what are we saying when we say shit like that? We're saying that, no, I'm afraid we're going to have to, some of ours are going to have to bleed and die before it gets into our head that these are real aggressors that need to be taken out. That is a pathetic moral stance, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and look, as we said, Hezbollah is also like with Iran, we see that they're weaker than we thought, and they are being dismantled after the leadership was taken out and top commanders were taken out. Their weapon stockpiles are being taken out now. And by the way, which is another thing that when you hear calls for a ceasefire now in Lebanon, those calls are calls to allow Hezbollah to continue to exist and regroup. Because no ceasefire, even if Israel fights the way it is fighting, which of course is not the way we would like because Israeli soldiers end up dead that way, Israel will end up defeating Hezbollah completely. There will be no Hezbollah if Israel continues. That is the thing that America is saying should not happen when they say there should be a ceasefire, which brings me, Elsa says here in the chat, Kamala is worse than everything. That's all we know. Trump is the only option left, whatever we can think about him. So possibly Kamala is worse than anything. But it's not whatever we think of him. If Trump is elected or before he's elected, it's important to criticize him. It's important to point out his flaws and where he's bad. And that's always important, by the way, even with politicians who are good, which Trump is not.
Well, my point, though, is that whoever you vote for, ladies and gentlemen, even if you vote for them, they can be subject to criticism. Ayn Rand very famously in 1972, when she voted for Richard Nixon, called herself an anti-Nixonite for Nixon, and that tells you the whole thing. I'm going to vote for this guy, but boy, I'm very critical of him. And that it has to be a position that we can be able to take. We wouldn't have world leaders at all who might be better when there is a difference, better than the other guy. And that is a judgment call, ladies and gentlemen. I understand, but keep criticizing them, even if you vote for them.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura Seto, for the super chat. Laura Seto says, thank you, team. Your discussions are greatly appreciated. Well, thank you. Your support and participation is also greatly appreciated. Feral Lunch Lady says, if Trump had been around before the Civil War, he would have made a deal that would have prevented the Civil War. Would that have been so bad? Yeah, that would have been
Yeah,
terribly
but
bad.
what's wrong with the continuation of slavery? It would be okay to continue to
She may
enslave
have been
African Americans? I
joking
mean, would
with
that
that
be okay
comment.
with you?
That may have been a sarcastic comment. I'm not sure. Let us know. You have maybe less than a minute to let us know if that was sarcasm. And thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, James, I still think Trump is a better result than President Harris. Possibly. Again, we're we might find out what another Trump presidency is like. Probably, I think, at least according to recent polls. We might find out
Close,
what
but
the
he's got
Harris
the wind at his
presidency.
back. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And yeah, we are out of time. The reality show extra starts in a couple of minutes after we wrap this up. That is open to all members and YouTube members. We are back tomorrow with the Daily Objective and the reality show, where we will be discussing the UN on the Daily Objective. And will Israel be kicked out of the UN? Much like will Iran retaliate? My answer is let's hope so. I'd
Let's
love
hope so. Yeah.
kicked out of the UN. I
Well,
would
let's hope they
absolutely
kick the
love it.
U.S. out of the UN too.
Yeah,
All right, and
yeah.
Great Britain
That
as
that
well. Then things will really be rosy from my perspective.
and in the reality show, we'll be discussing this latest essay by Jeremy Bowen. Daniel, I don't know if you have it handy and you can put it in the chat so people can read it ahead of time. We will read it on the show. Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on TRS Extra in a couple minutes.
Be safe.